Chapter 2 Looking for Work. October 1884. Tall schooner and bark masts, shorter root sloop masts, and steamship smokestacks rose into the sodden island skies over St. Thomas Harbor as cries of "Buy my fish!" and "Hey, banana! Hey, banana!" collided into the hot, humid air. Baskets of bunker coal balancing on the heads of singing women were going aboard steamers and to feed fire boxes and boilers. As Timothy moved through this noisy bustle looking for work, other cargoes and boxes and crates were being loaded or unloaded. Bogoi, a thick fat plantain, and breadfruit, and mangoes and pawpaw, and bags of sweet yams came ashore from the downland island sloops, single masters. Clad only in pants made from a flour sack, his bare feet splashing over the smooth blocks of wharf stone, Timothy added his own voice. He shouted to bosses on the cluttered decks, offering his services this early morning. His earnest face and sinewy upper body, color of bunker coal, glistened from raindrops. "Sir, I work hard, I do." Sometimes he made a few Danish pennies, hand-carrying packages too fragile for wheelbarrows or pushcarts, but he was never satisfied with the handful of coins he took home to Hannah Gums, his foster mother. He knew he was big enough, strong enough, even at age 12, to lift some of the wooden crates that came out of the holds, or to push a loaded barrel into the long, low warehouses that faced the docks like huge piano keys. So far, none of the stevedore foremen, all as black as he was, had done more than scoff at him. The bosses told him to come back when he grew up. Instead, his anger mounted each day. The busy Danish port, located where the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea met, lay in the track of vessels bound for South America from Europe, Africa, and the Atlantic States. The winds and tides led favorably to St. Thomas. Throw a bottle into the ocean off Senegal's Dakar, and it would likely float to the Caribbean islands. Steamers and ships under sail arrived daily. They moved slowly into the circular dark water harbor, once a volcanic crater, now under the guns of two ancient forts. Timothy stepped over the thick lines that secured the ships to land, careful not to get into the way of the sweating men. They were guiding barrels down heavy planking. He had passed 4 ships and had now approached a big, trim, white four-master that had just arrived. She flew the flag of Denmark and was called the Amager, out of Copenhagen. She hadn't begun to work cargo as yet, but he stopped midships for her as 2 sailors bore a stretcher ashore. On it was a youth who appeared to be no older than himself. His left leg was laced between boards bound with twine. Timothy thought he'd seen him before, a local boy, and he ran up to him, asking what had happened. "The leg done broke," the victim said. His face was gray with pain. "I fell down the ladder. They taken me to the doctor." He spoke in musical slave dialect, as did Timothy, though neither had ever been slaves. Interested, Timothy walked alongside the stretcher bearers. "You work on that ship?" "Cabin boy I be." "Uh-huh," said Timothy, having a sudden idea. Cabin boy. That was where to start. "You be going back to her?" "They paid me off. Can't work for 6 month, maybe the mate said." Timothy wished him good luck and wheeled around. Heading back for the Omega, he thought about what a lowly cabin boy did. Took care of the captain's and mate's rooms, did their laundry, served their meals, jumped at their most ridiculous wishes, but that was better than stirring Hannah Gum's wash kettle. What could he learn from stirring hot water over buckra clothes, white people's clothes? Best of all, even if he was temporary as a cabin boy, he could sail the seas. Timothy wanted some outrageous day to own his own inter-island schooner or sloop, to be called captain, and sail the Antilles chain to Barbados or beyond, with freight and passengers. To get to be called captain, the only school was the sea. That much he knew. He'd visited the waterfront regularly since he was 6 or 7, perching on a bollard, the big iron mushroom over which mooring lines were looped, to watch whatever went on. When he had time off from helping Tante Anna do her work for the rich people who lived up in the hills, he usually came to the harbor. Already he knew quite a lot about the ships and the men who sailed them. They drew him past Kronprinsen's Gade, the beginning of Main Street, drew him past the old warehouses where pirates once stored their loot, drew him past the singing coal woman. He'd sit on a bollard and daydream, listening, watching. Truly wondrous things happened on that waterfront. 3 times each year the ice ship, a four-masted bark, would arrive from New England, with its cargo of blocked ice cut from far northern lakes. Timothy loved to put his cheek against the sawdust-encased blocks, feel coldness he'd never known existed. The same ship carried barrels of rum north to a place called Boston. Once, a barrel being hoisted aboard dropped and burst. Then even the seagulls got drunk. He knew by now to get permission to board any ship. Once he'd been kicked in his backside for boarding without asking. The husky sailor, standing at the rail of the Omega, bare to his belly button, wanted to know what Timothy's business was. "Cabin boy I be asking to be," the sailor, an island man, grunted. "Ah, you'll be sorry," laughed, then said, "See the mate. He be back soon." Timothy promptly took up station between the 2 low-deck houses and waited, dry-mouthed and jittery. Already tempted to leap down to the wharf and forget about his wild dreams, he forced himself to stand up. 20 minutes later, a chunky, squat buckra, blond-haired and blue eyes, wearing a soiled white cap, returned to the Omega and looked at the boy standing between the mainmast and the mizzen. He listened briefly to the sailor, then walked over. "What's your name?" He spoke English with a Danish accent and puffed a short cigar. The official island language was English, in schools and otherwise. Light-skinned children were encouraged to go to school. Light-skinned girls needed to be educated for domestic work in the mansions. "Timothy, sir." Fright made his mouth flower dry. "Last name?" "I have but one name, sir." "How old?" "12, sir, I think." "You think?" Hannah Gums had estimated his age. She didn't know for certain. Only his unknown mother knew. "Yes, sir." "You want to go to the sea?" "Yes, sir." Though he stood soldier-stiff, his knees felt like sponges. "Open your mouth." The mate came closer, blowing out strong smoke. Timothy opened wide. He knew that slaves like Tante Anna, who had been emancipated 41 years before in the Virgin Islands, had to do that, show their gums. Now he had to do it too. He knew he did not have gum rot or other diseases. No sores. "Bend your head. Bend it." The mate took one blunt fingernail to separate the hairs and examined Timothy's scalp. He was looking for lice. "Spread your toes, boy," the mate ordered. Timothy bent down and opened his toes, feeling a humiliating surge of anger. But he dearly wanted the job. The mate was looking for chiggers now, he knew. Taking a backward step to examine Timothy's whole body, the mate said, "You look strong enough to scrub a deck." "Yes, sir." "Have you ever been to school?" "No, sir." With skin as black as a sea urchin, he wasn't exactly welcome. "Can you read or write?" "No, sir." "Can you count?" "Yes, sir." Timothy half lied. He can count to 10. Tante Anna had taught him. "All right, Timothy. 4 kroner a month and keep. Do you have a shirt and shoes?" $4 a month. A fortune. "I asked you if you have a shirt and shoes," the mate thundered. "I have a shirt, sir." "Get a pair of shoes. We're going to New York. Your feet are freeze. I don't need frozen feet on this ship." "Yes, sir." The tobacco-smelling mate walked away and Timothy twirled around, permitting himself a wide smile, then leaped off the Omega. He began the run the second his feet hit stone, threaded and dodged through the light rain west toward Bacoa, the poorest section of Charlotte Amalie, a squatter village. Among the collection of one-room wooden shacks in Bacawal, where the coal carriers lived, was the one belonging to Hannah Gums. Feet flying in rhythm with his joy, Timothy hadn't known such excitement in however many years he'd been on earth. Shoes? He'd never worn shoes in his life. The soles of his feet were tough as a leopard shark's back. But yes, he'd find a way to get shoes. Nothing would stop him. Nothing would haul cold water on his soaring spirit at this moment. He trotted along the inner edge of the harbor for a quarter-mile, then turned sharply inland and began running up a low hill. St. Thomas was a series of ridges and hills, some of them steep. Crown Mountain was 1,500 feet up. Some streets were no more than stone steps upward. Most of the rich people lived in the high hills, not the lowlands. Wary of hurricanes that visited occasionally, people prayed that the island be spared at the beginning of tempest season, and prayed again in thanks at the end when it was bypassed. Timothy ran on.